This is the Creative Market Free Goods Roundup for the week of March 9th, 2015. As usual, there are 6 different free goods this week, but they are free this week only. So if you think you have use for any one of these 6 different free items, be sure to check out the description below where I'll place links to each one of them. So first up is Burne typeface. So this font is provided in OpenType font format and also includes some extras shown right here on my screen. The extras are provided in Illustrator as well as EPS formats. They're just some nice hand-drawn looking scroll elements, so those are also available inside this pack, and I think they're a nice complement to the font itself, which is shown right here on my screen. So the font is all caps in its appearance, but if you type in lowercase, these are how the letters will look, and if you type in uppercase, you get these much more ornate looking letters, so that's a pretty interesting combination here. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer here on the elements that are drawn in lowercase first. So as you can tell, they do appear to be uppercase, but they have some pretty interesting characteristics to them. If you look at the B, for example, the interior lines are very wavy, which give this font an interesting and handmade look to it. And I'll just keep on scrolling down through all these different letters here so you can get a good idea of how the font looks as a complete family here. And I really enjoy certain letters of this font. Like I think the K is just super well done. It has a very interesting appearance to it with that huge foot at the bottom there, as well as the way that the circular letters are treated, like this O and Q. They have these neat ridges at the top and the bottom that are a little bit different than I've seen in the past from other fonts. I think it's kind of an interesting way to handle the shape of a circle in a font that has a lot of these kind of trailing feet on them. And I'm just going to check out now the uppercase letters here. So as you can tell, the uppercase letters are much more ornate than the lowercase. And when I say lowercase, I mean they are typed in lowercase. They are obviously all drawn to look like they're in caps, but they have a pretty cool look to them with a lot of ornate scrolling work, which I think really does a nice job of highlighting these different letter forms. So be sure to play around with mixing up the uppercase as well as the lowercase letters to create some really interesting and unique combinations of letters that might make this font work even better for you. And they also did include all the numbers here, as you can tell, 1 through 0. And it also has a very nice selection of special characters here. So if I highlight over this and then go to type and then glyphs, and that's how you can tell all the special characters that are included in any kind of font you're using. There's a nice selection of different special characters here. Everything you'd come to expect, nothing too crazy, but if you're looking for a certain punctuation or special character, it's probably included in the set. So I went ahead and typed up free goods roundup just so you can see how this looks when it's actually typed out in a sentence. I think it looks really good. It has a very vintage vibe to me while also looking very handmade, so I really enjoy this font. I think it's pretty unique in terms of fonts I've looked at in the past. I think it does a great job of having a lot of character while still being extremely readable in a font that will probably add a lot of style to whatever it is you're working on. And of course you can use the bonus swirling elements right here to take it to the next level by making little framing elements for whatever it is you type out. This is a really strong headline font, so you might want to use this nice, big, and bold in any kind of project that you want to give it a handmade and vintage feel. I might find myself using this font for that exact purpose in the near future, but I hope you like this font. I think it's a very cool font personally, and if you do like this font, be sure to pick it up this week while it's still free. Next up is 4 crown patterns. This is a set of 4 different repeating patterns with crowns as the centerpiece of the design elements here, and they're included in both EPS as well as JPEG format. So I have the EPS files open inside Adobe Illustrator here to show it. So I went ahead on this particular pattern and went ahead and then repeated it, just so you can see that the seamless repeat works just fine. So these should be able to be scaled up as big or as small as you want depending on what you're trying to achieve. Now I'm just going to go through the other 3 remaining patterns here. So as you can tell, crown is the main elements for all these, and then there are some nice subtle differences between all these different patterns. The color palette is the same throughout all these if you look at these right here, but inside Illustrator it's pretty easy just to go ahead and click on, for example, the background, double click on the fill, and then you could change it to be something else if that's what you want to do. The last one here is a little bit different than the other ones, as it has a diamond as well as the crown as part of the pattern. And of course you could use these by just grabbing the certain elements you want to use. So like let's say you want to use just a crown or just a diamond. It'll be easiest to do this inside Illustrator. You can click on the element, right click, and then ungroup, and then you should be able to just drag off, for example, the crowns. If you want just one crown, ungroup it again, and that way you can drag just one around. The same thing applies for the diamonds here, and by doing so you could make a custom pattern using these different elements. So if you want to use, for example, the diamonds and then the dot pattern in this particular repeat right here, you should be able to go and do that. So feel free to customize not only the elements inside of these patterns, but the color of these elements themselves. So if I want to change, for example, just these crowns right here to a slightly darker tonal color, I can go ahead and do that quite easily. Same thing goes for the dots. If I hit I on my keyboard to use the eyedropper tool, I can then just click on the crown that I recolored, and it'll go ahead and match that color quite easily. So a nice pack of 4 different repeats in EPS as well as JPEG format, and if you think you'll have use for these, be sure to pick them up this week while they're still free. Next we have 15 Grandpa's Texture Volume 2. This is a set of 15 different textures in JPEG format, and I have 10 of them open inside Adobe Photoshop here to show it. And I'll go to image and then image size quickly here to show you how big they are. They're roughly 2700 by 4000 pixels high, so these textures should be plenty big for most applications where you want to use them. Now I'm just going to quickly go through the 10 that I've selected here just so you can get a good idea of what you can expect in the pack. There's a whole lot of grunge in these. These have a lot of texture to them, and they're pretty unique textures. Like this one, for example, has almost an organic looking pattern to it, where some areas are in a pretty sharp contrast and other areas appear a bit blurry. I'm not quite sure what's causing that effect, but it's pretty unique. I don't see a lot of textures that have an appearance similar to this. It's pretty darn interesting to look at. And I'll just keep on going through here. And also, as you can see in this particular one, a lot of these have a torn paper edge to the side of them, so that might have an interesting effect when you apply this texture to actually give your work look like it was perhaps torn out of a notebook or something similar to that. Some of these textures also appear to have been folded several times to create really rough edges. If I zoom in a little bit closer on this one right here, you can see that there are some holes in the paper that are visible that might give a pretty interesting appearance over a silhouetted illustration or perhaps even a logo. And I'll just go through these final few here very quickly. And on the very last one I'm going to show, I'll show you how it looks applied to my logo just to give a possible use scenario there. Here's another pretty cool one if I zoom in a little bit closer here. Once again, you have some areas that are in pretty sharp contrast, but then these other areas that appear a bit blurry or a bit more abstracted. I just think that's a really interesting effect where a lot of texture packs tend to be very sharp and very contrasty, and this one's doing it a little bit differently where they have some very sharp and contrasty areas as you'd come to expect with most texture packs, but then other areas that are much more subtle. I'm not totally sure how this effect was created, if these were scanned or perhaps even photographed, but it's definitely a pretty neat look. So on this last texture here, which is actually one of my favorite textures of the bunch, I went ahead and just applied it to my own logo so you can see how it looks applied to an object. So I'm just going to turn this off really quick, and this is how it looks on my logo when my logo is colored in an orange color. I applied it via a texture mask here, so if I invert that by hitting Control-I on a PC or Command-I on a Mac, here's how it looks inverted. It looks pretty cool. And I'll just quickly change the color here from orange to black so you can see how that texture looks a little bit better. It's a pretty neat effect, and once again on this texture you can tell that some areas look nice and sharp, and some of these other areas, these lighter areas, appear a little bit more faded, a little bit more blurred out. So it does a nice job of giving this illusion of depth because of that. But a cool pack, and do remember this is 15 textures, not just the 10 I showed. So if you like the 10 textures that I did show, you might want to pick up the entire pack so you can check out everything that's included, and be sure to pick it up this week while it's still free. Next up is Stormy Day, which is a one-page WordPress template. So this is a theme for WordPress, which is the most popular content management system out there, and it is a fully responsive theme, which means it should look good on no matter what kind of device you are looking at it on. And it's also a one-page theme, which means that all the content is displayed on one page. So as I scroll down here, you can tell that it treats all the different sections of the pages as one long parallax scrolling page. And that does change a little bit as I go into some of these different elements right here for the portfolio. But I'm just going to quickly scroll down to the bottom here just so you can see everything that's included in this particular web page. So there's a lot of the very standard things that you come to expect in a WordPress theme. There's a nice contact us section as well as a footer with all the social icons that you would need. There's a nice section for displaying your team members or yourself depending on how your particular business is set up. Right here is a spot for news or perhaps blog posts, and you can go ahead and just scroll backwards and forwards through all the different stuff here. If I click on one of these individual elements, it'll actually take me to a specific page for that, which I actually prefer to a light box that a lot of one-page themes will have. Sometimes just a little box will appear with an image and some text, but this way you can do a whole lot more. There's a lot more room for text and images, so you can really go in depth with whatever it is that you are doing. And as you can tell right here, there's also a built-in comments section, which really does a good job of making your website feel that much more alive. I'm just going to scroll back to the main part of the website right here, and I'm going to scroll up a little bit where you can see this interesting text block. So I'm assuming you could change this image to be whatever it is you want it to be. I think a lot of these images were taken from Unsplash, which is a free picture website, but you can go ahead and put in different quotes or different whatever it is you happen to want to say in the section, and people can just scroll through it, or it'll automatically scroll as time goes on. The portfolio works just like the blog section before, where if I click on a particular thing here, it'll bring me to a new page where there's room for nice big images. There's these interesting little bars right here that'll scroll and fill in depending on what kind of percentage you put. I'm not sure personally how I'd want to use a percentage bar, but if your business does use stuff where you might want to show a certain percentage of completion or treat it almost like a skill chart, like 88% means you're pretty darn good at illustrating, that is a possible way you could go ahead and use that. I'm just going to go back to the main page once again here. And on this portfolio too, as you can tell, there are tabs for different sections. So right now it's a show all. But if I click on audio, it'll just automatically show all the audio things, or photography or videos, and you can customize this to be whatever you want for your particular business. And I'll just scroll back up to the top here, to the very top. So what I'm gonna do here is reload this page so I can show you something cool that this particular page does. As this reloads back in here, you should see some lightning strikes come in, as they were doing right there. So that's kind of a cool bonus with this particular theme, that these lightning strikes will automatically appear at the beginning of this page loading up. They seem to stop after a while, so when I showed this initially, those weren't happening, but that is a cool little added bonus to this particular thing. And at the very top here, if you click on any one of these sections, it'll just automatically zoom you down to that part of the page. So I'll just click on contact, for example, so it'll automatically scroll all the way to the bottom here. And that bar does stay at the top, so if I want to go to services, it'll just scroll you right back up there. So this is a very quick theme to navigate through. But that covers the basics of it. If you want to experiment with this even more, just go to the product page on Creative Market. There'll be a link in the description of this video where you can hit the live preview and check this out for yourself. But I think this is a pretty cool theme and it seems to work really well. I haven't run into any weird bugs or problems like that. So if this theme looks like something you might have a use for, be sure to pick it up this week while it's still free. Next up is hand-drawn rustic decorative elements. So this set of vector elements is provided in Illustrator as well as EPS format. So I have the Illustrator files open inside Adobe Illustrator here to show it, and there's two different variations, but all the elements inside are the same. There's the black version right here, so all the elements are colored in black, and then the white version where they've basically inverted the color to be white elements instead of black ones. It really doesn't matter which one you choose to use, as you can go ahead and just click on any of these, double click on the fill here, and change the color to be whatever it is that you want it to be. It's pretty quick and easy to do that. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit closer here so you can get a better idea of what these look like up close. All the transitions on these different swirling elements look pretty smooth, so it looks like they spent a little bit of time here making sure everything looks nice. And these also have a very nice hand-drawn feel to them. I think this would work really good if you're perhaps using them in combination with your actual handwriting or a very well handwritten font, as there are subtle irregularities in these different elements here that really do a good job of conveying the idea that these are handmade and not necessarily just computer generated. Sometimes things get to be a little bit too perfect, which makes it not look like it was made by hand, but instead drawn with a mouse. I think these do a nice job of avoiding that, and there is a really nice selection of different elements here to pick from, so be sure to go in here and mix and match and combine these different elements to make something really special and unique if you choose to use this. I think this one in the upper left hand corner here does a really good job of showing how you can combine these different elements to make something that looks pretty darn cool. I could even see this center framing element right here to either house an illustration or perhaps a photo if you wanted to bring these into Photoshop by copying and pasting them in and then just masking this little area out right here to place a photo in there. That might be a really cool idea if you're a scrapbooker or just like collecting images like that. But a really cool pack of vector elements here, and remember, since they are vector, you can make them as big or as small as you want and you won't have to worry about losing quality. And they do have the white variations as well as the black, but you can of course recolor these to be whatever it is you want them to be. So that's it for this pack. If this looks like something you have use for, be sure to pick it up this week. And next up, I'm not totally sure how to pronounce this, Inkystro, which is a set of 45 hand-drawn Illustrator brushes. So this is a set of brushes for Adobe Illustrator, and they appear to have offered support for a bunch of different versions of Illustrator, so you should be covered as long as you have Adobe Illustrator to use these. And if you open up this file and you're wondering where these brushes are, just go to Window and then Brushes and make sure there's a check mark next to it. If there isn't, just click on the word Brushes, and then the brush window should appear. It's right here on my screen. And as you can tell, there's a really large selection of brushes to choose from here, all of which have a very hand-drawn looking appearance to them. So I went ahead and just made these simple curved shapes right here to illustrate how these look a little bit better. I think that these brushes tend to work the best when you use them in small bursts like this. When you actually apply them to an object like a star, as you can tell, they don't quite look as hand-drawn as they would if you were to not close them off like these stars are. So I think as long as you're working in smaller shapes like you would with a pencil or a paintbrush, think about using these like you would a paintbrush. That's how I think you're going to get the best overall appearance of these brushes. So as I scroll down here, you can tell that each one of these different lines is its own brush preset, and this isn't even close to covering all the brushes that are included in this set. So this is just a small section of the possible brushes that you can go ahead and use. And there's a lot of really interesting diverse looks where some of them like this one are nice and broken up. There's very wispy ones like this one right here that I'm kind of tracing with my mouse cursor, as well as much more bold looks. And of course, if you don't want to use the stock size of these, you can just highlight over whatever it is you create and then make sure your stroke window is open, which is under Window and then Stroke near the bottom. And then from that stroke window, you can just increase the weight from 1 to 2 or 2 to 3, whatever you think works best. By doing that, you can add a lot of different versatility and different looks to each one of these different preset brushes right here. but a very cool pack of brushes that I think if you're an illustrator and you want to really vary up what you do and make sure that everything looks hand-drawn and everything doesn't look like it's drawn by the same brush, which sometimes in digital work can really make something look a little bit too machine-like and not enough like a nice hand-drawn illustration. So huge brush packs like this will keep you busy for quite a while and also make sure that your work always appears to be more unique and hand-drawn. So a cool pack of brushes for Adobe Illustrator, and if you like these brushes and you want to create some stuff with them, be sure to pick them up this week. So that's it for this week's free goods, and do remember they are free this week only, so be sure to check out the description of this video where I'll place links to each one of them. And I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please like and favorite, and if you want to see this video every week, please subscribe. This video is released every Monday to let you know it's free this week on Creative Market. Thank you for watching.